Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss American Trading. For those of you tuning in with us again, thanks for being with us. And for those of you who are new, welcome. We are talking, this is an episode of Secret War on Cash, a podcast that we like to do that just discusses some of the things that are going on in our financial system, our financial markets, and the economy. And I have our regular with us today, Chris Agelastos. Chris, how are you?
Great, thank you. Just preparing for this 100-degree plus heat in the fall. Lovely Arizona.
Arizona has had a brutal summer. I know a lot of places throughout the country have.
For sure.
But to that point, you know, I've talked to several who gone through a little bit of a warmer summer. It seems like everyone else they've gotten out of the heat and it just keeps on coming. But I think you were telling me next week the valley is supposed to get back down to friendlier temperatures.
Yeah, it's weird how it happens, but yeah, next week should be good. Barbecue weather.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, let's talk about the banks, something we've talked about a few times here in these podcasts of ours. And they've been somewhat of a hot topic in the news cycle for a while now. And it just seems every time it's another problem of some kind. To some extent, they're somewhat related, but it just seems to be the new norm with banking, these problems. In the most recent one, we saw one of the most recent, I should say, JP Morgan freezing millions of accounts to the tune of billions of dollars due to a glitch of some kind. Now, these accounts were overseas, but this is not something we haven't seen or experienced here domestically as well. And you'll see the article on the screen for those of you viewing this, or the link is there for those of you tuning in. Personally, Chris, I think it speaks to the fragility of the entire system. Tell us a little bit more about what happened.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, they're saying it was a technical glitch and they're going to investigate it, but they're still investigating. So I don't know if they don't know exactly what happened or if they don't want to say, you know, maybe it was a hacking attempt or something negative that they're worried about, you know, that press getting out there and people losing even more confidence. But, you know, this wasn't a small deal. This was $81 billion completely frozen for a day in Japan. Thankfully, just a day. And you're right. Yeah. Okay. This is overseas. Right. But do you remember back in, I think it was September, JP Morgan had an issue where 16,000 plus ATMs were down for a weekend. You know, people couldn't access cash or deposit their paychecks in the ATMs. And of course, with, like we've been talking, more and more branches closing, you have less options to be able to walk in and actually see something. So, I mean, these are big problems. And even in this instance with JP Morgan in the U.S., over 19 states now, I believe, the attorneys general have accused JP Morgan of, you know, freezing people out of accounts without warning and giving no explanation. So it's definitely a big problem. You know, law enforcement is obviously aware and paying attention to it. But, you know, what are they really going to do? You know, I don't know. Usually it's the bank pays a fine, even if it's billions of dollars, it's billions less than what they make. So, you know, how much do they really care?
Sure. Well, you know, and I think when you hear these stories, I mean, look, it's a headline in a news story, unless it happens to you, then it becomes a reality.
Right.
And, you know, we're talking, as you mentioned, the overseas situation, $81 billion, or the recent domestic one with JP Morgan, where, you know, you had over tens of thousands of people who had no access to their funds. And, you know, these are people who are maybe looking to get groceries for their family, gas for their car. These are people living real life. And point is, it's not just like one or two. I mean, we're talking, you know, thousands, tens of thousands. I think even in the situation that just happened overseas was millions of people. Yeah, millions of accounts.
Yeah, millions.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's, again, these are not once in a while headlines. It's kind of become somewhat the norm. So, you know, so we talk about this on the international level, but on the domestic front, it was also recently reported where Wells Fargo is finally agreeing to pay a depositor back over $200,000 in funds that were wrongfully frozen. And it's
Right.
taken months and an abundance of attorney fees to get there. But I mean, I guess it's good it finally did. But
Hmm.
the lawsuit now, Chris, as you can see on the article on your screen, um, the lawsuit continues for damages, and the family involved is left to clean up the mess of the financial mess of the last several months. But I mean, at least there seems to be some resolution there. And now, when I
Yeah.
think back of how many stories like this or examples that we've seen over the last several months, I ask myself, how are people supposed to remain confident in our banking system when these things seemingly just are constantly and continually occurring? So, Chris, tell us something insightful here. Give us some hope. Give us some encouragement.
Well, the banks aren't giving me a lot of positive to work with, and even in this situation, I guess, right. The good news is this guy is getting his money, or at least near term. They say he will, but it actually, this whole process took about a year, with legal fees. He hasn't been able to pay his mortgage, right? So this isn't Bill Gates, where he couldn't access a few $100,000 of his money for a while. This is a guy that has bills to pay, and a couple $100,000 was the overwhelming majority of his savings. So, and even in this instance, right, the banks aren't even admitting fault. They're paying the fine, which sort of, or giving him his money, and they're going to try to settle the suit that he's bringing against them. So, I mean, it's basically admitting fault, right? But I think what this shows is, the banks are not our friend. I encourage people to not keep too much money in the bank. If you rely on the bank, at some point you're going to be let down. And I think you'd mentioned before that sometimes people don't realize, or feel the pain of it until it hits them directly. But how many of your neighbors do you need to see with their power going out, before you buy some candles, or a generator? Most people don't even have the candles, right? This
Right.
day and age. So I think, look, as Boy Scouts, we learned you need to be prepared. You aren't going to be secure or feel safe, unless you have backup plans. And there's no downside to preparation. Putting some things into place. I know we talk obviously a lot about gold and silver, because it's a way to have some of your money, something outside of the traditional banking system. Most people have the bulk of their money in, maybe company retirement plans, or stocks, bonds, CDs, mutual funds, things like that. Which we're not against by any means, but what do you have to prepare you for when a problem comes up and you don't have access to those funds? And I think so many people, if they don't understand something, if it's new to them or a little foreign to them, they just sit and they do nothing. And what we offer people is the ability to learn. Come to us for some education. We'll explain what's going on. We'll explain how to use precious metals. Let's hope you don't need it, but having it sit there on the side, if you don't need it, it's going to sit and grow. What is the downside? And I think that's what people really need to do. Is, I think sometimes they feel like, if they're not ready to buy, or they don't know what they're doing, that they shouldn't contact us until they're ready. I think if you don't know what's going on and you don't know how to protect yourself, that's precisely when you need to reach out and start learning. Because once you understand it, it's extremely simple. You'll feel better about it, and it'll be easier for you to move into something and at least get yourself a little bit of protection until whatever problem pops up goes away. Maybe it's only a few days, or weeks, or heaven forbid, months or longer, but have something in place.
Sure, sure. And to be clear, that you say the banks aren't our enemy per se. Very nice people. I have friends who work at banks. I mean, they're not villains. Excuse me. I think it is more accurate to say it's a reflection of just the system as a whole. It's become very impersonal, very sterile. No regard for the actual human beings that it's affecting, and a lot of it has to do with, like with most corporations these days, it's just the kind of the bureaucratic dynamic of the whole situation. And as Chris mentioned, you've seen on the screen, and for those of you tuning in through one of the podcasts, just audio, you can contact our office to receive information on how to put maybe a retirement plan into gold, get that secret war on cash, educate yourself a little more. A very easy read as to what's going on in the financial system today and present day. We have an outstanding offer for an introductory offer for people wanting to get into, just try getting into silver. You can do so very inexpensively for a phenomenal silver piece that from price point, you can't beat it. So even if you were to contact the office, just to ask them a little bit more about that, I think it would be well worth your while to do so. And how you get in touch with us, our toll-free number is 1-800-289-2646, or you can visit us online at www.swissamerica.com, and you just talk to one of our representatives. Everything is free, complimentary to you outside of the silver offer. That's very inexpensive, but it's not totally free, but I think you'd be very pleased with it. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for tuning in today. If you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe. Please feel free to comment, and we'd love to hear from you if there's any feedback you'd like to give us. And you can also follow us on all the various social media platforms. So thanks again, Chris. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and we look forward to doing so again soon. And for those of you tuning in, thank you for taking the time to do so, and have a great rest of your day.